Welcome to the First Case Expert Series. Today we are speaking with Jeff Wertz, our perioperative instrument coordination expert. I'm your host, Melanie Perry, and for the next 4 episodes, we are going to be discussing some different perspectives within our healthcare team. And Jeff is going to walk us through building a business case and also establishing why it's important for leadership to participate and be invested. So thanks for joining us today, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. What perspective are we starting with? Who are we talking about today?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the chief financial officer or whoever is in charge of the finances that's overseeing, the perioperative space that you're in.
All right. And how is it that we go about building that business case when we're talking to the CFO?
Yeah, so very obviously, they're more concerned with numbers than really any other part of the hospital, I would hope. And what they're really going to be breaking down and looking at is looking at cost benefit analysis of what you're proposing, what we're bringing up to them, looking at capital operating expenses and how those fold into whatever is being proposed, and also financial risk mitigation. So how is this going to avoid future costs down the road? So trying to break those down into 3 kind of blueprint topics for you to be able to prepare and be ready to discuss with them. Now, take that for what it's worth. This is a blueprint of, a very broad spectrum of, this is the financial people. But I think it's really important that you go and have conversations with them prior about where their immediate focus is, because every facility is going to have their own, their own focus and their own goals that they're trying to hit. The more that you understand those and how they're unique to your facility is going to be extremely important, so you can make sure that you're matching and aligning your goals with theirs.
Yeah, it helps to speak their language and also speak to the things that they are interested in. I think I've heard time and time again from you and then from other experts talking about the ways we communicate. We have to tell our stories, but we also have to tell it in a way that the person listening is going to be able to relate to, right?
Absolutely. So kind of digging in on a couple of those to kind of give some more material for you is really around the cost benefit analysis and explaining to them where that ROI, that return on that investment, is going to come from. So, in our space, and when we're looking at the perioperative space, I'd be really curious to hear any of your examples of this, but looking at how this is going to both directly and potentially indirectly. A lot of times in perioperative space, it is going to be more indirect because it's challenging to measure a lot of these different components that are going on when you're dealing with the patients in the OR and all the different moving pieces of that. But doing as much as you can to really break down into the data of how it's impacting overall productivity, things that are impacting the patient, but really helping them understand, is OR cancellations an issue? Is having the inventory available on time an issue for your facilities? And understanding the metrics that are around those and are in place currently or are non-existent, which is of value in the first place as well, because you have to have some data and information to be able to manage that department. And I think that's traditionally one of the big complaints that I've heard from talking with CFOs is, they don't have a lot of information besides what their productivity is, and even that is a kind of a question mark. But I'd be curious, Melanie, in your experience in presenting this with the financial teams or the financial individuals, what have your successful conversations been?
Well, I think I was actually thinking more about where I have struggled because, yeah, you can see our throughput. You can look on paper at your spreadsheet and see what our supposed productivity levels are. It's very rare for all of those indirect things to be taken into account to really look at how your throughput or how your productivity is affected. And so in recent conversations that my director has been having with our CFO, with our leadership team, and it's looking at those very things and our instrument use and the new surgeons that we have coming on and all of the extra work that's going into it. But on paper, you don't see necessarily why we might need extra this or extra that, because some of those data points if they're not captured, and if you don't capture all of the data, then suddenly you can't tell the full story. And if you can't tell the full story, then your numbers people can't understand why what you're asking for is so important. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense, and I think that kind of goes back to our earlier discussions that we had in the space of making sure that you're focused and have a direct plan on accumulating some of that data and information so that you can be armed with some data to support whatever you're trying to bring in to that. And then kind of moving on to the next component of this is how is it going to be paid for? You know, if it is a tool or solution that you're bringing in a vendor for, that's where you should be leaning on them to provide a lot of that information and ideas on how to present this. So again, I think even going back to the ROI component, you want to leverage those vendors that are coming in to help you present that case. But then also, which may be more beneficial, is even asking them for different creative models on how this gets paid for. So is this something that's going to come out of their, you know, annual capital budget, or is it going to be coming out of your operational expense? Where is there already a cost being incurred for this that could potentially be leveraged to help facilitate this? You're going to have to go in and be able to ask those questions of the CFO, but also present some creative options. And I think more and more vendors are getting involved with that to be able to bring more creative solutions that are more capital friendly for them, or prove a model out, try things out before they're fully invested in it, and gain some of that ROI or achieve some of those metrics of what you're looking for. But having that conversation up front is critical, and understanding where all those cost levers can come in and what you can leverage, and where there might be budget or where there's going to be a shortage, and how can you at least get the first step of that initiative accomplished.
I really do agree. And I've experienced that in my own time in leadership in the OR. But working with the vendors to help tell the story, to actually help break down those costs in the different ways where, well, yes, well, you might be spending money here, but if we do this, then this cost goes away, and then you can change this. And so they can help you work through all of those cost savings and expenses to really help you get an accurate picture, so that when you do go in the CFO's office, yes, you're clinical, they're not, but you can still speak in a language that you both understand, because you have worked with the person on your vendor side who can help you tell that story and give you those numbers to help you make your case for whatever it is you're asking for. And I've
Yep.
done that, and it was very successful.
Yep. Yep. So you want to partner with them, and then even if it is something that you're not necessarily bringing in a vendor to help facilitate, if you just need the tools to be able to go in and be able to manage or measure what you're going for, you need to be able to speak to those, but also speak to, you know, you're not bringing in a third party vendor. This is something that you're trying to drive, and showing that initiative goes a long way as well. And then the final component is really looking at what's the future of this. You know, what are we mitigating moving forward, or where are there potential costs going to come down the road? And then we'll get into that in like the IT part of it, and that's definitely a concern that the CFO might have of, well, what other integration costs or other things that can pop up. But being aware of those things is critical to know that you've thought through all of those different potentialities, but then also what costs is this going to mitigate down the road? So why is this a good investment for us to avoid things like patient surgical site infections, malpractice claims, or penalties related to regulatory noncompliance? So all sorts of different factors that are at play here, but inevitably any of the solutions going into the hospital or that have been designed for the hospital is traditionally to either make things more efficient and save money, improve the safety and quality of the service to the patient, or it's also to help achieve those regulatory requirements and regulatory needs that are in place to also serve the patient as well. So, it really allows you to be creative and work through that with the financial person to understand those risks that are upcoming or coming down the road from a regulatory standpoint, If you're in touch with the regulatory bodies and they are able to help avoid things in the future, that's a tremendous opportunity for you to be in a great position to work with those people managing the dollars and cents at your facility.
Absolutely. And definitely being proactive and looking ahead. And like you said, really taking a multifaceted look at your discussion so that you capture all of those things, your efficiency, your patient safety, your financial savings, regulatory requirements, because a lot of times some our solutions actually encompass every single one of those. And so if we can
Yeah.
look at them from multiple angles and really make our case and tell our story from all of the ways and all of the areas that this is going to affect, and it does help us present a better business case.
And don't forget also, I think the biggest component of this is we're talking about the perioperative space. So the OR is one of the biggest revenue generators for every facility. So this is a profit generating department at the facility that all the surgeons that are going in there are very high value to the facility. So you have to understand that you do have some political capital to work with in those conversations because it's an integral part of the hospital's ability to make money. So the more that you're looking out for the best interests of the facility and the patient and your OR, as long as you're moving in that direction, you should be able to have a pretty successful or productive conversation with that individual because inevitably it's difficult to argue against patient safety, financial savings, and better processes.
Yeah, have a strong story to tell and all of your data, and it's really hard to argue with that. Thank you so much, Jeff, for providing your insight today and helping us see things from that CFO's perspective and how we can communicate with them. That is all the time that we have for today, but join us next time. Jeff is going to be discussing now from the OR manager's perspective, and we're going to see those things that really make a big impact. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the First Case Expert Series.